All right, ladies, happy Sunday for you, wherever you are today. And, for the ones that are going to be watching on the replay, I know it's Sunday. I know it's a little bit more challenging to show up for these calls, but, hopefully you're going to be able to watch the replay on this and just send us any messages with any questions at the end. Um, so we have our amazing I'm always promoting this woman because she has been the game changer to many of our clients in this journey of hormone balance. Um, she's going to share a little bit about her background, but I am so honored to have partnered with her and with Vince because I truly have seen, as we continue working with women on perimenopause and menopause, how, when their hormones are out of whack and they are feeling miserable and nothing we do with nutrition and fitness, actually supports their goals unless we do an intervention with some kind of either herbs or hormone therapy. They don't see breakthrough. And once we start working with them in a very, I love how can I say, how very cautious Megan is in regards to this, because we see the clients just really starting to transform again and coming back to life, if you will. And then we have some other clients that come into us, from doing hormone therapy with regular doctors and whatnot. And obviously there is always a, how can I say, there's always a, how can I say, exception to the rule with this, but we see, unfortunately, ladies coming into the program doing pellets and whatnot, and at that point now they become estrogen dominant, or they become testosterone dominant, and some other things. And that's one of the things that I would, and then we need to pull them from all of that so their body can, balance out again. So I love the approach that Megan has. And sometimes I even message her like, why not you didn't give more to this person? And she's like, less is more, Patricia. Less is more. And so I love that approach, and I thank you for being patient with me. I'm not the doctor, so I trust you 100%. But so today I would love for us to chat a little bit on, what happens with when somebody's, when a woman actually becomes estrogen dominant, for example. I've seen a lot of that happening lately in our program. And when also they start becoming testosterone dominant, right? So how do we help them with that? And then whatever else you brought, into a presentation would be welcome. But I would love for us to, touch base on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
With no further ado,
Megan. Thank you. And I apologize if you hear my dogs in the background. I gave them a bone thinking that would help, and now I can just hear them chewing on it. So super happy to be here. My name is Megan Del Corral. I'm a double board certified acute care pediatric and family nurse practitioner. I did my postgraduate work at the Cleveland Clinic in women's health, so obstetrics, gynecology, midwifery, and then I spent some time in the Center for Better Health and Nutrition, their intuitive integrative medicine program. And I'm now the clinical director for a new medical practice called Vital, VIDAL. And that's part of the enterprise under which has Nutrition Dynamic. And I'm the medical director for Nutrition Dynamic, Metabolic Mentor University, Practitioner Depot, and all things Vince Pitstick. For those of you who don't know, I met Vince going on 5 years ago now. He was my patient. I'll let him tell the story more candidly, but long story short, he walked in for a procedure and I was the person performing it. And that's how we met, in kind of a very uncomfortable situation. But we became friends very quickly, and we've been working together ever since, collaborating with clients and health coaches, and have kind of launched this whole collaborative platform of bringing medicine to coaching clients and patients. But the bread and butter of what I see is, all things hormone dysfunction for both men and women. So sometimes that looks like andropause for men, so the down regulation of their testosterone production, and menopause for women, perimenopause, which is probably our most common, so that transition, which can sometimes last forever, fertility and endocrine disorders. And in the mix of that is, this kind of hot topic of estrogen dominance and weight loss resistance, which is what we'll focus on today for sure. I do have some slides, which I'll start here. Let me just turn my phone on silent as well. So I kept things a little, so as a medical professional, I'm definitely more on the science side of the conversation. And so this is maybe a little bit of a deeper dive than what you've heard before, and hopefully you just walk away with some good outtakes. And I'll try to keep it pretty short and sweet so you can ask questions. I know some of the pharmaceutical interventions that we're going to discuss today are highly sought after, and at times probably even a little bit bastardized on the drug market. So I can definitely answer as many questions as you have on those in the hour that we have. Pull up my notes here as well. Oh, hold on. Let me go back. Sorry. Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect. And all right. So estrogen dominance. When I talk to or I teach new nurse practitioners or some of our clinical staff and consult from other firms, and we talk about estrogen as, one of the most impactful hormones. And when it comes to the science of replacement therapy and mitigating estrogen, I always talk about the B's. So the B's are associated with estrogen dominance, and those are breakthrough bleeding, also known as abnormal bleeding, breast tenderness or engorgement, mood swings that begin with the letter B, bloating, and with that you can think of any kind of gut dysbiosis, and we'll talk about the gut as it has a huge role in estrogen metabolism. Breakout of acne, so usually not like the jawline acne that we see with testosterone or androgens, but more on the cheeks or even on the forehead. And then weight gain as well. And so estrogen dominance is a term that's used to describe a hormone imbalance in which there is an excess of estrogen relative to other sex hormones, most notably progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone are always meant to be in synergy with one another in the body. While estrogen is crucial for so many physiologic functions, including our development of female secondary sex hormones, regulation of the menstrual cycle, protecting our heart as well as our bones. And same thing for men. So just like women have testosterone, men have estrogen, and too little estrogen in men can cause impotence or sexual dysfunction, fatigue, sometimes brain fog, and a myriad of different cardiac impacts. So it can be estrogen is very protective for cardiovascular health for both the men and the women. Factors so we don't have like one clear reason why people become quote estrogen dominance. What we'll talk about tonight for me, this afternoon for you guys in California, is how estrogen as a molecule is broken down in the body, and how are some ways that we can improve that process. And then what is the correlation between estrogen dominance, or again, estrogen as a molecule, and obesity or weight loss resistance. So some factors that contribute to estrogen dominance: low progesterone. So again, estrogen and progesterone are meant to be in synergy with one another. While progesterone levels are low compared to estrogen in certain parts of our time chronologically. Sometimes there's a deeper hormonal impact coming from our ability to regulate body fat, blood sugars, and what have you. Environmental, so exposure to environmental toxins, chemicals, endocrine disrupting substances might also influence hormone imbalance and cause estrogen dominance. Impaired liver function. So most of you know, or you probably think of our liver as our master filtration system, which it definitely is. And the liver is actually responsible for metabolizing and eliminating hormones, including estrogen. So if our liver function is compromised or not working optimally, it may impact the body's ability to regulate estrogen levels. And then obesity. So fat cells store estrogen. So if you were to biopsy a fat cell, you would see a bunch of inflammatory estrogens. So higher levels of body fat, which we see more in postmenopausal women, can definitely contribute to estrogen dominance. Oh my God. Oh, why my pictures aren't coming up? Let me pull this back up. This one is shown. I'll bring that up here this way. Doesn't want to demonstrate some good phase 1, phase 2 estrogen detoxification, which is super important. So for all of you who've had a Dutch test, you're probably a little bit familiar with some of the things that you're seeing on the screen talking about phase 1 and phase 2 estrogen detoxification. And the Dutch test really is the best way to identify.
Make just one quick question. Are you sharing something? Because we can't see anything.
Oh, is it not coming up? Hold on.
No.
Do it again.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, it kept cutting out for some reason. Let me shut this door too. It's driving me crazy. No, but you are very.
I can hear. I was like, damn, they are really.
She's like going so ham on that bone. Okay. Hopefully now it'll be a little bit better. So estrogen metabolism occurs in 3 phases, again, which is most easily identified in the dried urinary test for hormones, known as the Dutch test. So these phases involve a series of enzymes, which are molecules that react in different tissues of the body. Again, primarily phase 1 and phase 2, we're going to see in the liver, and phase 3 more so in our gut. And these enzymes help to break down estrogen from the body. So phase 1 is called hydroxylation, which is just the chemical process of adding what's called a hydroxyl group, which is, if you remember from like the chemistry table back in high school, it's just a molecule that's added to the estrogen hormone itself, and that helps to stimulate another enzyme called phytochrome P450, which then helps to pull it into the liver and get it ready for phase 2 to eliminate from the body. So phase 1 is all about adding that hydroxyl ion group to the estrogen molecule, stimulating the enzyme P450, and get it ready for phase 2, all of which happen in the liver. Phase 2 is called conjugation, and conjugation is attaching those molecules, so taking the estrogen with the hydroxyl group, which stimulated the P450, and attaching those molecules to what's called a methyl group. And that's where, kind of like a clickbait term, you probably have heard of methylation, and people like to kind of talk about it or discuss it in sharky detail at times. And essentially, adding a methyl group is like corralling that estrogen. So it's the lasso tied around it, ready to pull it through the liver and get it ready to go to the gut to then be excreted through our waste or our colon. And this process makes estrogen metabolites more water soluble, which again helps it move through the intestines much easier. What you don't want is your estrogen molecules to get clogged up in the liver, because then that's how we get inflammation and we're not able to detoxify or get rid of our inflammatory estrogens, and they wind up getting stored as excess body fat, increase in glucose levels and can cause a myriad of different symptoms for each one of us. Phase 3 is all about transport and excretion. And excretion is just a really nice way of saying poop, like getting it out. And so this primarily happens again in the gut and in the intestines. And so we're taking these conjugated estrogen metabolites, getting them through the kidneys and or the intestines for excretion. And, again, things that can impact or impede this whole process, a deficiency in these cofactors that you see here, and probably, again, a lot of you, if you look at the back of your supplement bottle, probably a lot of this stuff included, especially the B vitamins are super, super important for that phase 1 estrogen detoxification. Glutathione. So glutathione is an amino acid and an antioxidant that's made by the liver. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. And then some different flavonoids and polyphenols, which again are things you probably have heard about just online, which are just really good enzymes and vitamins, minerals for the body that help to improve our liver's ability to clear out these inflammatory estrogens as part of a normal daily process. Just keep it on this view since it doesn't want to play nicely. So this is, I actually stole this from Dr. Carrie Jones, who is probably the foremost authority when it comes to estrogen metabolism. And she is all things Dutch test, super, super smart. But this is comparing, so poor methylation here, so frowny face. And when you add in, whether it's diindomethane, glutathione, lifestyle habits, all these, coenzymes, B vitamins, improve your gut health, this is what a good methylation pathway would look like. And the reason why we say that this is bad when your body puts estrogen down, what's called the 4-OH pathway, is because this tends to be the most carcinogenic. So the most likely for your body to turn that estrogen into a cancer molecule. So putting you at higher risk for estrogen receptor cancers, as well as, again, more diffuse inflammation in the body, which can cause more acne, more weight gain, joint pain, brain fog, migraines, headaches are something really common that I hear with estrogen dominance. And from a insulin standpoint, we tend to see higher blood glucose with people who are estrogen dominant. So correlating estrogen dominant and weight loss resistance or obesity. So again, estrogen and fat cells. So adipose tissue or fat cells are an important site for estrogen production. And in obesity, the increased amount of adipose tissue can result in higher estrogen levels. Excess body fat can lead to also a production of what's called aromatase, which is an enzyme that takes your testosterone, and this happens in both men and women, and it converts that testosterone into estrogen. So really common on this side of the conversation for me to see men and women come to us with both low testosterone levels and high estrogen. And a lot of times the conversation is like, oh, I just need more testosterone. That's why I can't lose weight. And I'm like, no, like we need to get your estrogen under control. Maybe you could use some testosterone in the future, but it's if we don't fix the imbalances, the lifestyle, the diet, the liver function, we are adding testosterone is not going to help. And sometimes they even gain weight from it if we're not really careful about dialing all that in. Also, we see a lot of insulin resistance with estrogen dominance. So obesity is super, super common with insulin resistance. That's why, type 2 diabetics who by definition are obese tend to have higher estrogen levels and higher body fat. Obesity can cause low-grade chronic inflammation. And again, that shows up as a different myriad of symptoms. Inflammation is just this umbrella term. So for some people, it's actual puffiness, like can't get my rings off, can't get my shoes on. Skin changes, psoriasis, rashes, joint pain, fatigue, like diffuse fatigue, where you can't get out of bed, you don't want to go to the gym, lack of motivation. Sometimes that even spirals into depression and anxiety. And in the metabolic process, estrogen, we know that it can increase body fat distribution. So we think of like the love handles, hips, thighs. And we see that in both men and women. Men will start to develop breast tissue when they have this estrogen dominance. Excuse me. So going into, okay, what can we do about it? And, dialing in our cofactors, making sure that we're getting a good amount of highly sourced B vitamins. I would add magnesium to that level, maybe going through a gut protocol with your health coach, dialing in stress, lifestyle. What else can we add to the picture to help ensure long-term success of your estrogen clearance? And, if weight loss resistance or obesity is a problem, that we're really focusing on that. So again, glutathione is made by the liver naturally. It's a powerful antioxidant, and it's essential to the body's natural detoxification process and plays a huge role in estrogen metabolism. Glutathione interacts with estrogen metabolites and helps in maintaining a balanced and healthy hormone environment. Some key impacts of glutathione on estrogen metabolism specifically. So participates in the detoxification, particularly in that phase 1 hydroxylated form. So adding that hydroxyl group, which again, remember, that's our first part of getting rid of estrogen through the liver. So glutathione helps to convert those estrogen metabolites into water-soluble compounds, again, which is what we want, so we can poop it out much easier. Glutathione also protects against oxidative stress. So during estrogen metabolism, if we're going to go down that bad 4-OH pathway, that can produce what are called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, which are very harmful molecules for the body, and they cause DNA damage. So glutathione helps to act as an antioxidant by neutralizing those reactive oxygen species and protecting our cells from oxidative damage, and supporting overall cellular health. So phase 2, conjugation. So we've got our hydroxyl group, we've added our P450. Now we're ready to conjugate. So we're going to add that methyl group to lasso our estrogen and pull it down into the gut to be eliminated. So glutathione is also involved in that phase 2, where it helps to create what's called glutamic acid, glutamac acid, and that helps to, again, facilitate the conversion of estrogen into water-soluble molecules for excretion. So, when we're balancing and we're using glutathione as a molecule, and there are a lot of different forms, there's troches, there are suppositories, there's tinctures like liquid drops, injectable, IV, I'm trying to think of what else, a lot of other ways you can get glutathione in the body. Because we want that, natural, I guess, our own formulation of glutathione, however we're bringing it in, it's important that your glutathione is what's called liposomal, which means carried in fat, which any of you who inject glutathione, you'll see it's like an oil base, and that's how you want it, because part of that natural process of that fat-soluble glutathione is that conversion into the water base so that it can be excreted easier. So you always want glutathione to be liposomal. That's how the body's naturally meant to absorb it. Getting into,
I just dropped real quick. I just dropped a link from one that I take pretty often on the chat. Was wondering, what do you think about that one? It's a little pricey, but it
Yeah, Live
stinks like
on Labs is great. Yeah.
dirty socks. I'm telling you, it stinks like a dirty socks, like
Oh,
teenager
it
dirty
tastes
socks.
terrible, but anything that tastes like bubble gum is probably not what we're looking for.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not meant
But
to.
this thing is amazing. I even if I start getting, feeling sick, like getting with the cold, and I take this, it nips it in the bud, like right away in the bud. It's just amazing. This supplement, I never run out. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oops, you got muted. Sorry.
Sorry.
You
Live on
muted,
Labs
Megan.
is, or can I hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Live on Labs is really great. They have a lot of good products. And yeah, it's not meant to taste good. And with the injectable, you can't taste it, but it does not feel great. It definitely can be a little bit sore, sometimes a little bit itchy, can leave a little bit of a bruise. So there's not always a great way to get glutathione. And probably the easiest is going and getting an IV. That's the most expensive route of all of them. But if you're really opposed to eating smelly socks or injecting yourself with something that may give you a little bruise, then probably getting an IV is the best alternative there. So the kind of nut and bolts of what we're going to talk about today or tonight, and again, I'll answer any questions that you have, are what are the role of the two most popular drugs on the market, being semaglutide and tirzepatide, and how do they play a role in this estrogen dominance, estrogen detoxification? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about them, but the 30-foot view and how they work and improving this process is really through two things, which is weight loss and improving your insulin sensitivity. So that is like the biggest takeaway. So semaglutide and tirzepatide are made by recreating two natural peptide chains, and peptides are amino acids, so building blocks of proteins that you see in our body. And they are classified as what are called incretin hormones. And the two most dominant incretin hormones that we have are this GLP-1, which stands for glucagon-like peptide 1, and GIP, which is glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. Don't say that 3 times fast. And they are naturally occurring in the gut, which is why any of you who've heard anything about these drugs, or if you've taken them yourselves, almost all of the side effects happen to be in the gut. Okay. So this kind of compares how the two different incretin hormones interact in the body and where we can naturally find them. How they play a role in the drug formulation is that semaglutide is all GLP-1, and tirzepatide, or the Mounjaro, and the newest one is called Zbound, I believe, the new brand, is a combination of both of these incretin hormones. So it's a lot stronger. That's, again, a 30-foot view, and I'll kind of go into the weeds a little bit here of how those two differentiate. Ozempic was the original formulation of these drugs, became rebranded as Wegovy, and then the tirzepatide started off as Mounjaro and again has been rebranded as Zbound. I couldn't find a picture of all 4 of them for this. So their net effect is on their impact on insulin. So going back to the obesity conversation, these drugs, were originally created for type 2 diabetics, who 99.9% of them for type 2 diabetics are obese. And type 2 diabetes is a disorder of carbohydrate metabolism, so your inability to break down carbohydrates effectively. Blood glucose gets too high, and that's actually the defining feature of type 2 diabetes, is measured by what's called the hemoglobin A1C, which is a 90-day reflection of what your blood glucose is doing. Now you could argue that high blood glucose probably is not the right defining feature of type 2 diabetes, but it's how it was originally diagnosed. And really what we're talking about is a state of insulin resistance. So in a person who's developing on their way to type 2 diabetes, their cells, most notably the cells in their muscle, but other cells such as those in the liver, which is where glucose is stored for a quote unquote rainy day, become very resistant to the effects of insulin. And so regardless of how much insulin the body is putting out, their blood sugars just keep going up. And, in an insulin sensitive individual, you take in food, your body has glucose, your body makes insulin to bring your glucose to a nice even state, and you rinse, wash, and repeat. In the insulin resistant patient, you're taking food, your body makes glucose, your body makes insulin, it's not enough, keeps trying to make more, not enough, keeps trying to make more. And with that, your blood glucose levels keep rising, rising, and rising. Your body's always trying to do its job. It's like a good soldier. So for that reason, of course, and this will tie into kind of the latter part of the conversation, muscle is the most important storage space, storage home for glucose. So, biggest takeaway from any of this working with your health coach is, cleaning up your estrogen detoxification pathways and building lean muscle. And that's the best way to prevent estrogen dominance and improve your weight loss resistance. So the more muscle you have, the more resistant you are to accumulating excess glucose in the bloodstream. So let me scroll down some of my notes here. So Ozempic, which was the original brand name again for semaglutide, came out many years ago and again was really just part of the algorithm for type 2 diabetes. As a side effect, patients were losing weight, and that stemmed the first big drug trial put on by Novo Nordisk, which was called the Step 1 trial, looking at obesity specifically using these drugs. And that's from that trial, they came out with a new brand name. It's the same drug called Wegovy. And the only difference was Ozempic originally only went up to 1 milligram. And in the drug trials you see here, it was studied up to 2.4 milligrams. And so that's where the new formulation came about. So semaglutide is again a combination, is singularly that glucagon-like peptide 1. And what's interesting with the drug formulation is they figured out a way to have that peptide chain available for up to a week. It's actually around 8 days, 8 or 9 days, so that you don't have to inject yourself every single day. I'm going to mute my.
Wow, I have so many questions. My brain is like, I can ask a bunch of questions. I love it.
We'll get to it. I'm almost,
yeah.
A few more slides.
You're good.
And just like anything in this country, to be honest, it's like one is good, more must be better. And one of the reasons why semaglutide, I don't want to say failed, but isn't for everybody, and it's not for everybody, but had a lot of challenges was because of the side effects. So a lot of slowed gastric motility, so how fast food moves through your intestines, which can cause constipation. People were going in for surgeries and they still had like food particles in their intestines, which increases their risk of aspiration during anesthesia, nausea, headaches, fatigue, just all these kind of non-specific things that people weren't able to tolerate. So going back to the drawing board and how do we reap these metabolic benefits of semaglutide without the side effects, and that's where the drug formulation tirzepatide came out. And so tirzepatide is not the same as semaglutide. It's both, again, GIP and GLP-1. And with that, you get a lot of the benefits with way less side effects. And the dosing is significantly different as well, though they're not compared one to one. Like X dose of Wegovy doesn't equal Y of Mounjaro. They're completely different drugs. In both cases, though, for these drugs, they have a significant impact on weight loss. So when, originally studied, the first rendition was, I believe, 1 year and 4 months, and average participants lost an average of 42% of body weight. They went in with an average weight of 220 pounds. So that's, something to take into consideration. But, we did see some good promising markers and, change in, their overall, what we call all-cause mortality. So decreasing a risk by, why one person would die. So, and this is another schematic just going over how these drugs impact the body, both positively, and we'll go into a little bit next some of the negative downsides. But if you again remember or think about the avatar of a type 2 obese diabetic, if, I can help improve their satiety, so how full they get, from taking in food to prevent overeating, improve their insulin, glucose metabolism. So again, so we're not continuing to spike both insulin and glucose. I'm going to improve, by definition, their body fat. I'm going to improve their risk of having a heart attack. I'm going to improve, obviously, the risk of developing diabetes, metabolic driven cancers, etc. So sometimes taking the good with the bad is a good fair trade-off. And I think these drugs do have a good place, for many individuals. This is just a good overview of the drug trial for tirzepatide, just kind of getting into the weeds a little bit more. And it was put on by Lilly, is the company who does that. So going back to estrogen dominance and weight loss resistance, like where's the chicken and the egg? If we can improve overall body fat, and sometimes that means using a GLP-1 agonist, I think that can help with your estrogen dominance. However, where this conversation started about phase 1 and phase 2 estrogen detoxification, simply by having you eat less because I give you a drug that makes you feel full, isn't going to improve that whole metabolic pathway. Instead, it's more of a catalyst. It's like getting the cart out along with the horse, not before it. And, for some patients who don't have health coaches and aren't well supported, these drugs are really the first thing that help get the ball rolling. And for that, I think it's a great tool. Where we see, some impairments are when people use this simply to, lose a certain percentage or a certain number of body fat, but they're not taking care of the big rocks. They're not improving their liver health. They're not improving their sleep, relationships, community, nutrition, not eating enough, under eating, and, just become skinny fat in the end of it. And remember, so these drugs really didn't come out until 2017, which is not that long ago. So we also don't have long-term data, which is one of the most common questions I get is, okay, so what does this look like? How long am I going to be on therapy? And the answer is, I don't know. Average duration for a coaching client is anywhere 9 months to 2 years. And, what we do is we titrate the drug up following the guidelines as it was studied. So it's a once a week self-administered injection. Every 4 weeks, you have the opportunity to increase. And I always tell patients, I say opportunity because you don't have to, and more is not more. And then the goal is, once you achieve realistic relief of symptoms, so if it's body fat, if it's blood sugar regulation, whatever it is, then what's more important is the reverse out. So down titrating off of the drug as slowly as possible. And there are some patients, specifically binge eating disorder and some different neurological conditions, that they use chronic low dose. So sometimes the lowest prescribed dose, which is for semaglutide 0.25 milligrams and for tirzepatide 2.5 milligrams once a week, chronically, to prevent binge eating. And that's a trade-off in conversation I have with patients. And the most important thing, again, if you want to have long-term success with estrogen detoxification, with insulin sensitivity, and with improved body composition, is really building lean muscle. And, that's through programming, diet, again, lifestyle, and sometimes hormone support. Sometimes, especially for menopausal women, we do need a little bit of testosterone in the reverse diet phase, usually, while we're eating, an increased amount of calories to support lean muscle tissue. And it's just, again, a schematic going over, how to promote a healthy estrogen metabolism. And even Carrie Jones says, like one thing at a time. And I'm a big believer in that as well, where I try to encourage people to not let the diet or the lifestyle be more stressful than the intention, meaning like, is your face moisturizer making you estrogen dominant? Probably not. Is it toxic? Maybe. But if it's the one you really like, then let's like dial in everything else and get your vitamins up to date. And then maybe when that face cream is, and I know how expensive face cream is, when that one's gone, maybe you do look for a non-toxic and you try to get out these, xenoestrogens in your environment. Or, maybe it's investing in a blood glucose monitor to have that real-time feedback of like, what is your blood sugar doing? So always try to take into account like one thing at a time, try to move the big rocks. And maybe that's just sleep. And as someone who's chronically trying to improve their sleep, I still don't have it dialed in, but it's definitely a priority. My husband like hates hearing about it by now because he can sleep like the dead, so it doesn't matter, like every man. But I'm constantly like, get that light out of my face, you're gonna ruin my sleep. And yeah, and probably I don't help though because I let one of our dogs sleep in bed with us, which is not good. But that's kind of the sciencey kind of 30-foot view. Big takeaways: know your estrogen pathways. Again, Dutch test is really the only way to look at that. Build lean muscle, take care of your liver, and improve your insulin sensitivity as much as possible. And could these drugs be appropriate for you and help with that? Maybe. But there's no free lunch, and they all come with side effects, and all need a lot of due diligence. So I'll take questions.
Wow. Wow, girl, this is amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is this helpful or what? I am always, I was one of those that it was 100% against supplements and, any medication. I would always think that, oh my gosh, you're taking this stuff, you're a loser. Seriously, I was like, I'll do everything natural. I was the natural girl until I, became, I got into, I'm going to be 49. So obviously my perimenopausal years, and I became estrogen dominant, and, and then working with Vince, really opened up a whole different world for me and how I was able to, balance my estrogen. I had to do surgery because I developed polyps, endometriosis, even though I never had that before. It was just a mess, right? That it started to, and then when I understood, and then I developed like gut issues, and then also I work with Cassandra, and she helped me with the whole gut healing. And then when he opened up the MMU, I was like, no brainer, I need to get the certification because I know I'm going to be working with a lot of women and that is going to be on the same shoes. Then from there, it opened a whole new world. And now we have this collaboration where not only I'm getting certified with them, but we have this collaboration where they can administrate, this kind of support. We do have a few clients in the program that are taking semaglutide right now, but once again, I asked Megan to come and educate you ladies, because I talk to women every single day, on my DMs. And, I have had a few people that used to work with me and couldn't lose any weight, not because they couldn't lose weight, but just because they were not following any protocols, right? So there was no compliance there. And then few years later, I meet them and they are like, and I was like, are you taking Ozempic? Right? Like I couldn't even help. It just came out of my mouth like in a split second. And she's like, yeah, yes, I have. I was like, but here you are with no nutrition, right? Like Megan was talking about, you have no nutrition knowledge, because I
Yeah.
saw you do that in the program. You don't have any muscle building. You just use this once again as another fad, right? So with the program, we first and foremost, we go into the Dutch test. When we start working with a woman, the first thing we do, we clean up the nutrition and we make sure that those things are in place. So we put you on a strength train program so we can really optimize muscle growth. And then if we can see that nothing is moving, then we go into the Dutch test. And from there, we were like, oh, okay, now we know what's happening here. So we have had clients that despite of how much work they have done, how compliant they were to the protocol, how much we flushed them through the liver protocol, which is absolutely fantastic, they still could not break through. So at that point, I even had to open up my mind to say, okay, is this the right thing for these women, right? Now they have everything in place. They have a foundation of health. Can they take this medication? And they have, and now we have seen some of them already getting incredible breakthroughs with this. So I just wanted to prophesy that I am not here trying to push drugs on anybody, but if we have clients that, have gone through all the protocols and still can't see results, I believe that there is a place for medicine in that sense, you know what I mean? And I think that's, one of the things we need to learn and see all your friends out there, right, that are taking this drug without any support system. I feel really bad for them because we don't know what's going to happen, right? Like Megan said, this is all brand new. We don't know in 5-10 years what this is going to do for people like that. So there's so many questions I would like to ask, but I just wanted to prophesy. And then I would like to open for obviously you ladies to ask questions before I ask anything. And if we don't have more time, that's fine. I can always email you, Megan, but anybody has any questions? So overall, do you suggest me
Sorry,
try?
somebody in chat. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Now there is a question from Crystal. Do you suggest me try everything else before trying drugs like semaglutide and the other one you mentioned that doesn't have as many side effects? Yeah, I just answered that question. And you are not qualified, I'm going to tell you right now, Crystal, for that, because you are losing weight. And you are doing fantastic, even though you are not, like you said, 100% compliant, but you are pretty good with the program. And you lost, I think, 12 pounds in 90 days.
Oh, wow.
I mean, right? Like you definitely do not need to go on that route, girl. You're doing fantastic. Anybody else? Okay. So I do have, go ahead, Megan.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions here that I was taking notes. First, when it comes to the liver pathway, right? And when we talk about the flush, because the flush is a pretty new protocol in the program. Obviously, I just start implementing that, since April when I started doing the certification, and I have seen incredible results for our clients. But the how can I say the flush with this supplements like glutathione or whatnot, would that be enough? I have some clients that don't want to sometimes do the Dutch test, for example, and that it won't show on the liver. I'm sorry, it won't show on the blood test, right? It will show if they are estrogen dominant, but it won't show if they are getting stuck in the liver, right? So they would have to do a Dutch test in order to do that. So with the flush protocol alone, Can you explain a little bit more about the flush protocol for us?
Yeah, so flush is more of like a metabolic reset. So it's about bringing as many antioxidants, so kind of like the natural side of improving estrogen detoxification. So getting you out of the 4-OH into the 16 and more so the 2-OH pathway. And on blood work, the one thing I would say you could look at is sex hormone binding globulin, which is a protein made by the liver. If it's very low, a lot of times that's associated with diabetes. And we know insulin resistance, estrogen dominance, we kind of talked about. That's kind of like a poor man's way, but it's not perfect because a lot of things could throw off SHBG as well. So that's just something that kind of popped into my mind. But so yeah, the point of the flush is one, to bring in an abundance of food and nutrients. As you know, a lot of women are, and men, I should put men in this category, under eating. And when you undereat, by definition, you're not getting all the micronutrients that you need. So the flush is really about like helping your body work as efficiently as it can on its own, bringing in an abundance of nutrient density, which is going to really catapult anything you do. Most people always say, oh my God, I feel so great during the flush. And that's just a lot of times I'm like, just because you're eating so much and your body's so well nourished and you're well hydrated, your electrolytes are in balance and all that. Whereas, most of the time when we think about starting a diet, we think about elimination. So, when you kind of go head to head with the flush versus, I don't know, I'm going to start Whole30, the next day. What's challenging about Whole30 is that, it doesn't focus on the micronutrient density, which is where hormone support lives, whereas the flush really does. It's all about dialing in everything supportive for your body and an abundance of food versus an elimination of food, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And that supports that liver detoxification, upregulating the hormone naturally. Yeah. And, I remember when I did my first time, I had so much brain fog and adrenal, fatigue, and everything just lifted off. It was absolutely fantastic. Besides that, my gut, also my digestive system became so optimal, which was absolutely another amazing, another factor of that. So when it comes to estrogen, so if the woman, is now menopause or post-menopause and she has no estrogen, because of the situation of, how estrogen supports heart, health and bone health, would it be recommended for that woman to be taking HRT, so
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So you stop protecting that, or would just nutrition and strength training alone be enough to support that?
It's a loaded question. It's very individual. It's definitely in the category of like, it depends. So I always say, women have been going through menopause since the beginning of time without hormones. Now I own a hormone clinic. It's what I do for a living. So I obviously love hormones. So it's, a loaded gun when I say that. And so can they play a role? Maybe. When I think about hormone replacement therapy, it's really tailored to the patient's symptoms. Because I always say, if I took 10 women who've been in menopause for 10 years and I drew their hormone labs, they would all look the same, be zeros across the board. And that's not taking into account looking at their thyroid or again, sex hormone binding globulin, metabolic panel. If I just drew an estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, probably all be zeros. The question is always, how do those zeros show up for that patient? If they are metabolically ill or they have weight loss resistance, unless they are dying from hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, I'm not against estrogen. I just want to dial in everything else first. Like, okay, let's get you sleeping better. Let's maybe start with some testosterone. Because again, what I'm more worried about is, and even with cardiovascular health, like building lean muscle, sarcopenia. So they say like, grandma breaks a hip, dies of pneumonia in the hospital, right? Like, how do I actually protect you and help you live long and live well? So is there a heart bone benefit from estrogen? There is. But it doesn't mean that HRT is the route to protect your bones in your heart, if that makes sense, because chronological aging is going to happen. Ovarian failure, which is menopause, is going to happen. And it's really just about, okay, when do we add the estrogen, if at all? If you can live well work out well, you have great bone density because you resistance train and you walk and you do all the things. Why would I give you estrogen? It's just one more thing you're going to have to do. And, you know, if you take estrogen, you have to take progesterone. So now we've got two things you have to do. So, you know, HRT is a loaded gun and it's great for some people, terrible for others. And it's, you know, it's the biggest conversation we have for sure. But it's, again, it's a component to overall health. Hormone therapy is not a weight loss strategy. Like, cannot say that enough. The people who sell it or market it as it are lying. It's just not true. It is about supporting your own function. And there are a lot of thousands of benefits. I've been on HRT for 8 years. Like, obviously I believe in it, but I don't ever misconstrue like what the science shows and even what my patients see. Helps them feel great, gives them tools to take better care of themselves, but it will not help them lose weight.
Wow. Even, yeah, because if they are estrogen dominant, then obviously we can do, you know,
It's just gonna,
HRT
yeah, if
with
you
that.
are
Yeah.
menopausal and you just don't have estrogen, you can still be estrogen dominant.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of how your body clears out all this excess body fat and blood sugar.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point there. You said, because I have a, you know, a lady that, oh, this is because it's already 4 o'clock, but you know, she had you know, she's postmenopausal, and when she was on menopause, she had no, I mean, supposedly, right, she didn't have estrogen, but then she did become estrogen dominant, and then she developed ovarian cancer. So is that a correlation with that? Because probably things are getting stuck there.
Yep, 4OH for sure. Liver detoxification, DNA, free radical damage. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Wow. Do you see that, ladies, how important it is? Nutrition, the flush protocol, keep your liver healthy. There's so much more here. But you know, I want to support, I want to, you know, be, how can I say, you know, respectful of Megan's time. It's Sunday. If you guys don't have any questions, you know, we're gonna let her go. If you do, feel free to message me and I can email her with that. But thank you
No, thank
so
you for
much for
having
your
me.
time. I know that we have several ladies watching this
Perfect.
afterwards. I'm gonna watch this again and again because there's so much here that you can learn if you watch again. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for showing up for this call.
Have a
Appreciate
great
you.
night.
Have a fantastic one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.